Welcome to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast for authentic daters. I'm your host, Dave in Denver. Each week, we invite expert guests to come share their knowledge, tools, and tips to help you show up as your most authentic self. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the BBR, Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast. I'm here once again with my good friend, Jason Kendrick. If you want to catch his previous episode, he was the fourth episode we ever recorded. And we went deep into like nice guy syndrome and people pleasing and a little bit of attachment theory, but also really just like seeking approval from other people. So we had a lot of good things to say when Jason swung by last time to jump on the podcast. But I'm going to catch you guys up to where we're at right now. And Jason, you just shared a really cool video on Facebook. Check the Facebook page if you guys want to watch this, but it's your big why. Tell us a little bit about what motivates you and what keeps you going in this journey that you're on.
Well, it's kind of new for me to share this, so it's one of these kind of interesting experiences because I had a lot of fear around sharing my why. And to get real brief and kind of give you the 2 cents, I never really had the relationship with my father I really wanted. And so I felt misunderstood, I misunderstood him, and it really wasn't until he was on his deathbed that I learned more about who he really was. I had this image in my head, and of course, a lot of it was what he thought being a father was, because his father died when he was 5, and he didn't have that example, and so he thought he didn't know how to be a father, so he kind of took the old masculine paradigm and used that as fatherhood material. So it was a lot of the old, kids are mean to be seen and not heard, and kind of suck it up, and the old masculine paradigm. And so I kind of received this, and and it wasn't kind of, there were some times where he actually said, well, I'm an ass, live with it,
take it or leave it.
And so that was kind of my relationship. And then I find out while he's dying from his wife that he was really more like, we were more alike than I thought. He was much more give the shirt off his back, really helpful to people, and much more, not this person I thought he was. And it sent me kind of into a tailspin for a while because I couldn't believe I had this false premise of who my father was all these years. For 30 plus years, I thought he was just an ass. And we, not having these tools and not having this awareness, we never got to get out of that father-son paradigm, this old role, because we basically here's your script, here's my script, you play that role, I'll play this role, and this is how it's going to go. And without the awareness and these new tools that I've really kind of learned and developed over the past 10 years, that I didn't understand how to convey to him. And of course, looking back, I realized too that he didn't understand how to convey to me what he really meant, and we also weren't willing to give up ground. We were still in that old kind of paradigm of communication is about who's right. It's not about understanding. And I think that's one of the big things, one of my big whys now is really bringing awareness around what communication ought to be, what it should be, what it has been, and the differences between masculine and feminine dynamic, even just, I did another video right before I did my why that was about the number one issue with communication between anybody is assuming you're going to be understood. Assuming this person's going to understand what you're saying, why you're saying it, all those things. And there's so many just factors of, why people understand things the way they do. It's mood, it's experience, it's, socioeconomic, it's cultural. You have a better shot of understanding somebody who either English is their second language or they don't speak English a lot of times than you do somebody who's from your same town or from the same country, because there's this expectation of, you speak the same language, you're going to understand me. Well, we're not taking into account all the other factors. And it's almost like if we would take on the mindset that I want to understand to be understood. It's that same sort of thing. Like if you want, you give what you want to receive. And so I want to understand you so you can understand me. And like I was telling you when I first came in, I had this amazing experience today of misunderstandings on Facebook, and I was making a tongue-in-cheek remark about baby showers, and then somebody chimed in, and come to find out she was being tongue-in-cheek and just kind of joking and rolling her eyes, and I took it as an offense, and then she took my response as offense, and then we had this back and forth. But
That escalated quickly.
It did escalate quickly. It actually, somebody said that, and I thought it was funny. The nice thing, though, is that now I'm aware enough to know that, wait, there's no reason we should be having this understanding. So instead of doing what I used to do, which was get mad, shut down, and then go over and pout about why nobody understands me, I actually was like, wait, time out. Okay, here's my side. Here's, let me hear your side. I really want to understand. Mm-hmm. I know that in my mind I'm right, and I know that in your mind you're right. So we're both right. So it's not about who's right. It's about, can we understand each other's point of view?
Right.
And it was just like, this is a perfect day for me to have this escalation.
Because now we're going to come back later on in the day and kind of wrap it all up. Yeah. I like to think of conflict. Yeah. There's what I thought was the truth, what you thought was the truth, and then what actually happened.
Right. Yeah.
And in communication, just the basics of communicating between ourselves. Right. I think coming back to, a lot of people just want to be heard.
Yes.
And then your advice to understand, to be understood, is good. How would you do that in the moment, though?
Well, in the moment, I think it's like any other skill. It takes practice. And it's one of those things where being aware of like the 4 stages of learning, things like, there's stage 1 is unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. Stage 2 is conscious incompetence. Oh, I didn't know that. And so you go through stage 1, stage 2 really quickly. Stage 3 is conscious competence. This is the practice. This is the tying the shoelace, the tying the tie, creating that muscle memory. And you do jiu-jitsu, you do training, you know all about muscle memory. It's creating those neural pathways, and so that's where the work comes in. It's conscious competence. So it's, okay, in this moment, I'm going to practice this, and knowing that I'm in this phase, so I'm not going to be perfect at it. And each time I catch myself, catch myself a little sooner. So basically, you have to become aware, and then you have to practice it. So initially, you're not going to catch yourself right away. You're going to be like, I learned this new thing, and I should be able to do it right away. Uh-huh. It's like, no, you've learned this new thing, and now you need to practice this new thing to create, make it a habit. And then, once you get through conscious competence and you practice it enough, which is 28, 30 days, constant, or 2 to 3 months, depending on how often you get to do it.
And how difficult the skill is.
And how difficult the skill is. Yeah. But then you get into, unconscious competence. It's a habit now. You don't even think about it. But that's the process. And so you go, okay, I want to understand to be understood. But my old way of doing things was to react and then to respond, or not even to respond, just to react. It's just a visceral, like, you said this and that means this to me, so I'm going to respond with anger, or I'm going to respond with this, and I'm going to show you why I'm right and why you're wrong. Versus, okay, that triggered me. I'm not sure why I'm triggered. I want to understand what you actually mean, because I don't think you meant to trigger me, or even being honest, like, I'm triggered right now. I need to go take a break, and then I'm going to come back and ask you what you meant, because I don't think I understood what you meant. Uh-huh. And just opening the dialogue around understanding. I think we said this before, the difference between a stranger and a friend is the me too statement. It's like, yeah, me too. Oh yeah, you too? Yeah, me too. Okay. Uh-huh. Now we can be friends where we have similarities.
Yeah, there's a humanizing process of like, I'm not alone.
Yes.
And that helps any journey go much, much smoother.
Yeah, I think that's one of the struggles we have now, and it's coming around much more now with social media and things, is this disconnection. We're more connected and far less connected than we've ever been, because it's not true connection. We're not actually being seen. We're not actually understanding each other. And because of the impersonal nature of social media and the internet, people feel more free to respond because nobody's gonna hit you in the mouth.
Yeah, they can hide behind that screen that they're operating from behind.
And so, because most of us feel lonely, we don't feel connected, and a lot of folks don't have healthy tools. They don't have exercise, or they don't have friends, or they're stuck in this whatever their struggle is. That's their outlet. And so they're mean and they're vicious and they're bullying online because they don't have a healthy outlet. Mm-hmm. And then it turns into this cycle of, well, I'm going to judge you, and now I know who you are, and I'm going to tell you what I think of you, and then this back and forth and this nasty.
Right.
And it's never about, I want to understand where you're coming from, And I think I mentioned this earlier when I was having my little, that escalated quickly conversation. And it was like, we have 1,000 channels, and they're all tailor-made to your personal, viewpoint or opinion. Uh-huh. And we're slowly losing the ability to be around anybody with a different opinion or a different viewpoint. It's like, well, if you don't agree with me, go away. And I remember having that conversation with my dad a couple years before he passed. He's like, "Oh, I'm easy to get along with. Agree with me or go away." And I remember laughing, but feeling frustrated at the same time. It's like, okay, well, I don't agree with you, but I'm also your son. I don't want to go away.
Right.
So where does that leave me?
So now we're just placating to avoid the conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a tough place to be in. I meant to ask you, what tools from the past 10 years did you learn to arrive at this point now?
Lord, I mean, there's so much personal development work that I've done. I've done 90% of the side work, done all that. Joe Dispenza's work, Greg Braden's stuff. I mean, Course in Miracles. But what I think the most helpful tools are just understanding basic personality types, like the 4 stages of learning, the 4 basic personality types, or archetypes and things. Just awareness that we actually think differently. The different personality types actually have a different kind of communication style. They have a different focus.
Yep.
And so just having that awareness, you can actually tell by how somebody speaks, by what they say, where they're coming from, and then you can go, okay, well, this person may be, and a lot of times it can even be as simple as the position they hold. Because a lot of, say, controllers are CEOs or,
right.
Kind of bosses. And so
right.
they're more task-minded. They're more task-oriented. They want to know what you did, what you got done. And so if you start the conversation with that, versus like me, I'm, basically, my kind of home base is a supporter personality type, which is a lot of the, human resources, doctors, nurses, a lot of people are in the helpful.
Is this the DISC assessment? Is that what we're talking about?
It's similar to DISC. This one is the 4-quadrant assessment, which is very, very similar to DISC. And it's almost like there's probably 20 different personality tests out there, Enneagrams,
sure.
Myers-Briggs, DISC, colors, 4 quadrants, and
Strengths Finder.
Yeah. And so these are all just different people's perspectives on it, different people's like flavors. And so it's like, and that's what's interesting too, is sometimes even the different personality types will go to one or the other. Because like Myers-Briggs and stuff is very,
fluid, isn't it?
It's fluid, but there's also a lot of information.
Yeah.
It's like if you look at have you seen Human Design?
No, what are we talking about here?
Human Design is another personality type, but when I look at it, to me, it looks like some sort of crazy math, algebra, geometry, because they use different shapes and colors and this almost picture of like your body, and then where they put these different things there, and to somebody else it makes total sense. To me, I'm just like, it's great.
If it doesn't resonate with you, which one does resonate with you?
The I like the 4-quadrant or the DISC one because it's simple. And what I think is most important to understand is you want to be aware that there are basic generality personality types. Nobody is 100% one or the other.
Don't put yourself in a box.
Yeah, you don't want to put yourself in a box, but you want to be aware of what box you've come from.
Okay.
And the idea is once you have that awareness, now you have a point A. And you have your point A, you can create a map to your point B. Because you got to have those 2 points, unless you're in space and you need 7 points, One for reference. So you want
to go deep today, don't you, brother?
But that it's like have the awareness of where you come from, so that you know where you're going, but also because there's stereotypes and generalities for a reason. The alpha male stereotype is there's some truth to that, but that doesn't 100% fit anybody. But there's a lot of reference we can get from that. Just like the basic personality types of discs or quadrants or whatever. Yeah, that's where you will go when you're stressed. That's kind of your home base.
Okay.
But that's not all who you are.
Right.
And that's what I think tends to happen is as humans we like to label and box things. And so instead of it being an awareness tool, this is I'm a supporter, so that means A through B that this is me. Versus that's kind of where I go when I'm stressed, but I also have the ability to go here, here, and there, and I can actually be because the idea is to be more in the center, say, of the circle, and go to whichever one needs to be in the moment. The most powerful people, the world change makers, Gandhi and Martin Luther King, JFK, they played all 4 roles. They were the controller, they were the analyst, the promoter, the supporter, and whatever needed to be in that moment. And it's kind of that have awareness so that you can utilize these tools consciously until they become a habit, until they become a new skill and muscle.
Right.
And so having the awareness is the first step. And I think what tends to happen a lot of times, we get these awarenesses and we think that's the last step. Oh, now I know that. Okay, I'm good. But we haven't actually put it into place. We haven't actually practiced it, or we stop there. And I know sometimes men, we like to box those. You know, here's my box. All right, here you go. I'm gonna put that box over here. Let me put that box over here. Now I'm gonna go back to my nothing box because that's my favorite box and just hang out.
That's my comfort zone.
That's my comfort zone.
Well, you were talking about earlier. There's so many assessments out there. Where does somebody begin that's simple?
Something like Myers-Briggs. I mean, there's so many tests out there, and I would say, you know, Myers-Briggs, disc colors, you know, just, it's almost like, because of just the power of the universe, you go, okay, well, I just put it out there. I want to learn more about myself. I want to learn, you know, more about my kind of basic personality type, whatever, and then whatever comes to your attention. And a lot of times, as soon as you type something into Google, you'll get, you know, 100 different responses, and then whichever one catches your attention, that will probably be the one to start with. And I think you made a great point that, yeah, point A is not the final destination. You know, even in personal growth, even in learning, that learning is not the final destination. This is one rung on the ladder, one step on the staircase, you know, to infinity. So having a student mentality always, you know, student, teacher, teacher, student, where, you know, you're, you know, as a teacher, you're also the student.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that's part of that mentality that best serves us, that's most healthy, is that, yes, I'm going to teach people these things. But I even had the conversation today when we were having our healing moment and talking about, you know, our misunderstandings and the mistakes we made and things. I realized that, okay, let me explain that I'm teaching these things, I'm talking about these things because I need to hear it more than anybody else. These are the things I was lacking in all my life, you know, growing up as an only child and military brat, moving around all the time. I didn't have my stepsister didn't come along until I was 10, so I was basically a fully formed kid and didn't get that natural, like, brother-sister family kind of dynamic. You know, both my parents worked, so I was a latchkey kid. You know, I was on my own most of the time. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my learning, a lot of my journey was for my own selfish reasons. I wanted to learn how to communicate better. I wanted to learn how to be understood better. And like Course in Miracles say, you know, we teach best what we most need to understand. And I think that comes from just that natural harmony of what you need to understand, what your gifts are things that you need. And to really learn it, you give it to the world. You teach it. And so going through my process, and especially with dating,
this is an animal.
Yeah, I realized how unconscious I was and how lacking I was in communication skills and how just reactive I was to things and just assumed I knew everything and thought I knew what they were saying and thought I knew what needed to be done or how to say things, and then when it didn't go my way, I was like, what? It must be them. It's not me. It must be them. And then with a little maturity, I realized, oh no, it's me. I'm the common denominator in my life, so it must be me. So what is it? And then that's where a lot of the personal development work and a lot of this discovery goes, and it's a rabbit hole. It is the rabbit hole. I mean, the deeper you go, the more you're like, wow, I know nothing. You know,
a little bit more conscious at a time.
A little more at a time, and I mean, I think that's just life. We're consciously expanding and consciously growing and wanting to, and I think what the old paradigm and what the old mindset of I can get this and that's good enough, and I'm gonna find my little box, my little hole, and just plant myself there. But I mean, you look at even Socrates and Plato. Yeah. You know, they used to say there was growth, stagnation, and then decay. And then I think it was Plato or Socrates, whichever one came second, came along and goes, oh, I think you got it wrong. There's either growth or there's decay. So we're either in a growth mindset or we're decaying. Right. And so I think a lot of this stability is really decay, because we're not actively growing, we're not actively doing these things to become better or to become more aware. Because I think, I don't know, I'll ask you this, do you think we were sold a bill of goods about the American dream and like getting the brass ring, and once you get that is good enough?
Oh, it's definitely romanticized in our American culture that there's one version of success, that's for sure. Yeah. And in my own journey of self-awareness and self-discovery is that learning that it's a continuum. Right. That it's, once I reach the upper end of health, then I'm going to stay there. Right. Well, I'm a huge fan of the Enneagram, and I didn't stop there, which is a good thing, but what I've done is I've gone to the same Enneagram workshop 3 times now. Nice. Within 18 months, I went there 3 times.
And I learned after the first one that I was where I wanted to be, and I was on the path and the trajectory. Good. I was reading the right books. The second time I went to that Enneagram workshop a year later, I was not anywhere close to where I was the year before. And that was a good wake-up call for me, is slapping me in the face and saying that, like, Dave, there's still work to be done, that you slid back down on the continuum, and that's why things aren't settled with you right now. That's why you're not reaching your goals. So the 6 months between that workshop and the next workshop, I saw exponential growth, even from where I was beforehand, and hence a podcast on authentic dating in Denver. But the Enneagram wasn't enough for me.
Right.
I did do Myers-Briggs, and I learned that the difference between the two is Myers-Briggs is how I see the world, and the Enneagram is how the world sees me.
Interesting.
And I never really put that into perspective until I started sharing my journey a little bit with our audience. And one of our audience members actually sent that to me via Instagram Messenger. And I'm like, wow, that's an aha moment for me too. And then if I go deeper into the rabbit hole that we're talking about, StrengthsFinder, I learned that one of my top strengths is that of a connector. But you pair that with the Enneagram Challenger type, and I actually challenge people on why they're not connecting me with other people. How ridiculously outside the box is that? Although I'm taking a few boxes that we're talking about already here today, and I'm combining them into optimal well-being and optimal emotional health based on intelligence and self-awareness of myself. Does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, that's awesome. It's I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions we've been taught, or that's been passed down over the generations, is that the this or that mentality. You know, it's either this or it's that. You're either this or you're that. It's like, no, it's this and that. You know, I mean, the whole human experience is this paradox of, I'm this divine infinite being in this finite physical experience, you know, living in contrast so I can have these experiences and learn from. And then we've been taught, oh, well, there's a brass ring, and you go get the brass ring, and this is success. And then, you know, I've had this conversation with people before about the instigation, or what caused a lot of the midlife crises in the 70s, 80s and stuff. And a lot of it was, okay, well, white picket fence, you know, go to school, go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, 2.3 kids, and white picket fence and all that stuff. And then they do that, and then they're in their 40s going, okay, well, I've done all that, I'm still not happy. Now what? Yeah. And then they have the midlife crisis, they go finally do something that they want to do.
Sure.
You know, and so it's, all these things are tools. All these things are, you know, they're great like signposts. But if we try to stop at any one, you know, life, this whole linear perspective on life is what kind of gets us in trouble. It's like the whole linear perspective on time. Well, time's from A to B, and it's like, not really. Time's perceptual. Just like our life is not this linear thing, it's more of a spiral. You know, we're slowly going up these levels, and every time we get to this point where we're like, wait, I've been here before, but we're at a little bit different levels. Like you go in to do the personality tests. First time you're like, I'm perfect, I'm right where I want to be. Second time you're like, whoa, what the hell? Nowhere near where I want to be.
Eye-opening, right?
You know, and that's the thing. It's like we're always journeying, we're always growing, and we're never the same. And so trying to pigeonhole or say that this is me, it's like, sure, maybe right now, but in 5 minutes I'll be different, in 5 years it'll be totally different, you know, and having that growth mentality. And then I think even having a thought process or even a mindset around understanding ourselves, and not understanding ourselves to put ourselves in a box, but the continuous growth of understanding, how I'm continually growing, and as my experience grows, as my experience, you know, gets broader, then each time I see something, I see it almost with fresh eyes. I actually, you know Prince EA, you know, from Facebook. He's like the top of my Facebook feed because I love his videos. I wish I was that creative, because I mean, he was a rapper and I think he did like film school and stuff, so he's very creative with his films. But his videos and stuff are exactly the kind of things I want to share. And a lot of the things he shares, just a lot of things that sometimes I'll even piggyback off of what he shares because it triggers something in me, and then I'll share something on Facebook. But that thought process of just growth and not putting ourselves in any kind of box, and knowing that as soon as you put ourselves in a box, we're rebellious by nature as humans. Oh, you want to pigeonhole me? Yeah, I'll show you. You know, so just being aware that yeah, it's not necessarily a box, but a step. Let's use this as a step and move up. Let's use this as a step and move up. We're always moving up, and I don't remember which one of my books I got it from, but basically what kind of encapsulates that is like, there's always action to take, but there's nothing to accomplish. Like, there's no goal to get to, there's no brash ring, there's no end in sight, but there's always something to do.
Right.
So it's like, take yourself off the hook a little bit, take yourself off the cross, and realize you're always gonna be doing stuff, but there's no end goal in sight. It's like, if you've done a lot of the goal setting things where they're like, okay, create a goal and then create a time set and then go achieve your goal and do break the steps down, and then you get to your goal, and usually by the time you get to your goal and you achieve what it is that you thought you wanted, you don't want it anymore, or you've changed so much in the process that now it doesn't hold the same value to you. And it's that same sort of thing, like, well, okay, I got this thing, but that didn't make me happy like I thought it would. What's going to make me happy? Well, it's the growth, it's the journey.
Can we relate that to the big why? And how my purpose in my business has changed in 6 years, probably 4 times.
Yeah.
Because I started checking things off the list. Oh, I got an online training program written. That's great. Now what? That's awesome. And then I found my true purpose. And I bring that up because you just recently shared your big why. And that hasn't always been the driver for you, has it?
No, I mean, for most of my life, it was, I just assumed I was weird and nobody understood me, or I didn't fit in, and so I just learned how to adapt to each situation, which was classic nice guy syndrome. I really like the No More Mr. Nice Guy book, and that whole thought process completely changed my life. I mean, I think we've had this discussion about books that just hit you right between the eyes.
Right.
I mean, that one so much that the first example character in that book that Dr. Robert Glover used was named Jason, and his wife was named Heather, and that was the name of the last girl I dated 5 years ago. So it was like, oh, he wrote this for me. And it's part of that journey, because I just assumed that I'll be working with women mostly because that's who I surrounded myself with, because I was fearful of men. I looked at them as aggressors and competition and things, which classic nice guy syndrome. He spells it out in the book. It's like, okay, you stay away from men because you've demonized or vilified your father, so you don't want to be like your father, and you think being around men will make you like your father. And it's this this strange cycle of, okay, well, I don't really feel like a man because I'm looking to the feminine for all my validation. I haven't developed my own core of like who I am and my purpose and my own validation, so I'm looking to the feminine. So I feel less like a man, so I avoid other men because they're going to challenge me and basically show me I'm not a man. It's this whole thing. So I just assumed, I'm going to work with women. And then I got the insight that, no, you need to, and it was interesting. What triggered it was, I'm driving down 270 here in Denver, and this big old trailer was spray painted with, what is sacred? This question, what is sacred? And I was like, it's an interesting question. What is sacred to me? And I thought about it, and my initial reaction was, nothing's really sacred to me. But then I started thinking about my father's and I's relationship, and it brought up all this emotion, all this sadness, and just anger, and all these different emotions. And I was like, oh, well, that must be sacred to me because it's bringing up all this emotion, it's triggering me. And then it was like, I got this insight. Oh no, you thought you were gonna work with women. You thought you were gonna be doing A, B, and C. You're really gonna be working with Divine Masculine, learning about Divine Masculine, and then educating Divine Masculine on awareness, communication, all these different things that I've been picking up along the years for myself to try to improve myself and try to find my purpose, my why. And then even that shifted. And I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna work with men. So I started the men's group. I'm gonna do the men thing. And then I started feeling, even in the first few months, boxed and kind of pigeonholed.
Okay.
And then it dawned on me that the more I was learning in the men's group, the more I was learning about masculine issues, the more I could help women understand men. And then I was like, well, wait, if I'm helping women understand men, then I can learn from women and then help men understand women better.
And now we have a positive spiral cycle.
Yeah, now there's this whole thing of, okay, I thought I was going this way. And I love, it always reminds me of the entrepreneurial map.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be this
it's
way.
Not linear.
It's this very strange spiraling looking thing. And, and so yeah, it was really, the next, I went through this process, and then just recently it came up 3 or 4 or 5 different times, like on all these different mediums, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all these things. Just, it's like the universe is going, here's your next thing. And it was about, tell your why, tell your story.
Sure.
And I had avoided that like the plague, because I wasn't comfortable with my story. I wasn't even sure I wanted anybody to know my story, which, I think now, having talked to other people about doing their own story, it's pretty common that we don't want to share our stuff. We much rather talk. I would rather talk to you about your stuff. That's much more comfortable for me.
Sure.
Let's not talk about my stuff. I'll keep that over here. So, especially as a coach, you're
maybe
like,
that's why I'm just the facilitator on the podcast.
So, tell me about your why.
That's funny. That's really funny. Actually, I do have a question. Is that why you created this event that's going on tonight?
Yes.
So I know that when this podcast airs, we won't have time to get it out to the community, but I can still share the actual event. If you tell us a little bit more about because I believe you're combining what you just said into one event.
Yeah.
Are you going to host another one of these?
Oh yeah, no, this is going to be ongoing. I'm kind of hoping to turn this into bigger and bigger events, and I think the whole group coaching aspect is huge, but what it's called is Man Speak for Women. So it's really about how we as men communicate and giving them awareness around that. So, and it's kind of that, the aha moments. It's almost like when you learn, the personality type, like, especially if you learn different personality types in a relationship.
Uh-huh.
If you go in and do personality types with whoever you're in a relationship with, a lot of times you get awareness around all those things that irritate the crap out of you.
Yeah, and the reasons why.
Oh, that's why you do that. I never knew that. It's because we're kind of 2 blind kids in a cave trying to feel our way out together, and we don't, can't find the light switch. So, Man Speak for Women was actually a friend of mine, Carrie. We were having this discussion, and I didn't think much of it. I didn't, it was almost like if I didn't have these awarenesses through conversation and connection with people, I wouldn't know what I was learning myself and what I could share. And I was talking with her about, men do this and men do that, and this is why we do this. And a lot of times, I think the number one thing that I said that triggered her was, a lot of times as women, when you say things to men and it triggers them, and you're trying to be helpful, but it triggers them, and they either get angry, they go away, or they snap at you. And your whole thought process was to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And, confusion around that. And I said that. She goes, yeah, that happens a lot. And it's like, well, it's because you're being helpful triggers his story of, I'm not a man, it's emasculating, there's this, and it's a lot of that nice guy syndrome. It's a lot of this, social training that this is what it means to be a man. Emotionless, stoic. I mean, you did your whole thing on the stoic mask.
Yeah, thanks for attending the
awesome.
speech that I lost my train of thought in the middle of it.
That's what we do.
And thank God that it was a speech on vulnerability. That I was actually vulnerable on stage for 20 seconds, and I learned a ton. So thanks for coming to support. That's awesome. And in any way that we can help you get the Man Speak for Women, I wanted to chime in and say that oftentimes we're not sharing our thoughts and our story to get help from others. We're simply just sharing it to be heard. Yeah. And I need to remind myself of that often. Yeah. That my clients or the relationships that I'm in or my family members are just simply talking so that they can be heard. Yeah. And then not even looking for a solution, because maybe talking it out gives them a solution on their own, and then it takes away the emasculated feeling. Yeah. Would you agree or disagree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was the whole gist of starting, I did the Man Space group for men, Denver, because I felt like as men we had lost the skill of holding space. We had lost the mindset that I don't need to fix it. We've been stuck in this kind of nice guy syndrome of looking to the feminine for validation, and so when they have an issue, we immediately want to fix it. Because if we can fix it, then we're the good boys,
yeah.
and
then we're back to being safe.
Then we're back to being safe, and so we've lost. We can't have been trained out of or lost or however you want to put it, just the ability to hold space.
Okay.
And like you said, I mean, in being a coach and working with people, you realize a lot of times you don't have their answers, but going through the process, having them talk it out, and then reflecting back and giving insight and stuff. A lot of times, what you say doesn't resonate with them, but because you say it, they come up with their own answer.
Okay.
And that's the same thing, I think in relationships is, and that's why I want to do Man Speak for Women, because there's a lot of things that wouldn't be easier if there was little caveats put in place. And I think the biggest problem is that we think I'm communicating with you as a man, so you understand me as a man. But then I communicate with a woman from a man's point of view. She hears it from a woman's point of view. Okay. Then she communicates to me from a woman's point of view. I take it in as a man. Okay. And so there's this disconnect. It's almost like if you think about the yin yang, it's almost like we took it apart, flipped it upside down, and put the two masculine sides together and the two feminine sides together, and we wonder why it doesn't fit. Okay. Because we're not acknowledging that, yes, there are differences between the masculine and feminine. We do think differently, we do communicate differently. We're not educated on that, and then we're not using it to our advantage. Opening that space. Going, oh, you communicate differently. And that's why that whole communicating to understand, to be understood came about. It's like, well, if I'm just trying to get my point across, if I'm just trying to be right, then you're not going to hear me, because you're going to get defensive and just show me why you're right. When we're both right in our own minds, like you said, there's two sides of the story.
There's two truths and then the actual truth.
Yeah. There's what happened, and there's what I thought happened, or what I saw happen. And so just becoming aware of the differences and just acknowledging. And it's the same sort of thing. It's like the point A to point B thing. If I acknowledge that me as a man, I communicate differently. And if I acknowledge that my partner as a woman communicates differently, and I take that acknowledgement and awareness and shift just a little bit, just even in just the awareness, it helps 1,000 times the communication and relationship, because we're now trying to understand where each other's coming from, and shifting our perspective and and what we're saying, so we're understood. So
with compassion as well.
And that's the biggest thing. It dawned on me I don't remember how long ago, but just that we think just because we said something, we're understood. We think a communication or a conversation is about proving who's right. But that's just competition. That's just, you're just beating your head against the wall. Yep. But if I want to understand where you're coming from, because even though we may have similar interests, you may have grown up next door to each other, but your experiences are different. I mean, ask any twins. They're genetically identical, but they have completely different experiences. And so do we want to understand where we're coming from, or do we want to be right? And then you get back to the old saying, you can be happy or you can be right. I would rather be happy. I would rather work on being happy, because I've tried right and it didn't work for me so well.
So all of that being said, where do we go from here? I mean, how do we plan out a solution in order to accomplish what this commonality is?
I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
So learn your basic personality types. Learn where you come from. What is your point A? What is your Y? Learn about yourself, and then express that with somebody you care about. And then ask them about their why and who they are, and just open up the dialogue. But it's really about awareness and practice, because you become aware of where you are now, and then you grow. And then you need to become aware of where you are then, and then you grow. And then you need so it's this constant cycle of awareness and practice.
Sure.
And having open dialogues in relationship, in any kind of relationship. Like, where are you now? How are you feeling? Can I be supportive? Like the two most, there's a statement and a question I think are the most important in any relationship, especially when there's a disagreement or a misunderstanding. And the first one is, what did you hear me say? This is great for men, because we say things in our simple male-mindedness, and then it turns into this snowball, and you're like, whoa, that escalated quickly, what happened? And so, what did you hear me say? And usually what they heard is completely different than what you meant. And then if you get triggered, or if something happens that they say something and you take it wrong, you say, okay, wait, I'm feeling triggered, what I heard you say was, and it's kind of that same sort of thing, like if your lady's trying to be helpful and you get triggered and then feel emasculated and then get mad and run away or blow up, it's like, okay, wait, what I heard you say was, I'm not a man, blah, 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 blah. No, that's not what I said. I was trying to be helpful, and what I meant was this. And just having open dialogue, finding that safe space to actually communicate, to understand, not to be right, because that's what every argument is. Every argument is who's right. Hey, I don't like your shirt. I'm right.
It's pretty simple, but a good painting of the picture.
It's just that, and that's why I think personal development, like Landmark and Psi and Est, a lot of these different places are great because they bring awareness around these things.
Right.
You know,
And they build a community as well.
They do build a community, and then you actually get a place to practice.
Yeah.
Because you can learn about the 3 ways of listening. The I agree with, I disagree with, or be open to. Which the first 2 I agree with and disagree with are all about being right. I agree with you, so that means I'm right. I disagree with you, which means I'm right, and here's why you're wrong.
Okay.
Versus
I'm open to
your viewpoint. I'm open to your experience. And in that process of learning that, another spiral, I learned that there is even a deeper level you can go to, and that's where my hardcore communication comes from, because that mental listening is great. That's a great starting point. But if you can get from the head into the heart, and there's 3 stages even in the heart when it comes to listening and connecting. There's sympathy, which is, oh, you poor thing, I feel bad for you. There's empathy, with, oh, I feel you. But you don't really feel them, but you're creating that same feeling in yourself, which that means you're both suffering. But then there's compassion. There's compassionate listening from the heart, which is, I see the highest good in you. I also see where you're at right now. I acknowledge you. And I think that's where a lot of us as men fail sometimes in relationship, is being able to hold space with compassion. Because we get triggered, we see our woman crying and being upset, and we want to fix it.
Yeah, we do.
We're uncomfortable. But being able to drop into the heart with compassion and go, I see your light, I love you, I know you're going through something, and I'm just going to hold space for you. I'm going to listen to you. And that would save us so much time, because I think in a lot of my interactions with the ladies I work with, there's this quality over quantity. They want quality. And I talk to a lot of guys that are usually, well, when I'm in a relationship, they just want all my time.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
quality time.
It's really, if you give them quality time, if you're actually practicing being present and compassionate, and give them that quality of your attention, so that they know they're loved, they know they're cared for, they know, they have that safety, security, and that attention that is that core of the feminine need, then it's really about quality. You don't need to spend as much time making her feel better when she knows,
right.
She's got that quality, just like for us, the 3 masculine needs. I did a video not too long ago, I think it's on my YouTube channel, about just the 3 basic needs. And for us men, it's a sense of control, respect, and purpose. We need to know what our purpose is, whatever that is. And even though it's an undulating, spiraling, changing purpose, there's a core purpose that we need to be aware of. We need to feel like we have some respect in our relationship, and we need to feel like we have some sort of control. Whether it's real or not, there's just that sense of, like my woman respects me, she respects my opinion. That's what I think is really important for those caveats. Like, I just want to hear your opinion. I'm going to ask your opinion. I may or may not use it, but I want to know your opinion, so I'm more educated. Something like that, like preemptive questioning, or statement before a question, will save a lot of hurt feelings. Because I don't know, in your experience, in my experience, there's been a lot of times where I've been asked my opinion, I gave my opinion, they did the opposite, and then I felt emasculated and disrespected and stuff, and I didn't have the communication skills to go, why didn't you you asked my opinion, why didn't you do what I said?
Sure, in a compassionate way.
In a compassionate way, which, I mean, sometimes you don't even have to be completely compassionate, you just have to be honest. Like, okay, so I'm feeling triggered right now that you asked my opinion and you did the opposite, so was that on purpose, or, oh, no, I listened to what you said, and then I thought about it, and then I talked to somebody else, and then I thought, I'll do this other thing,
Yeah. Thank you so very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, man.
We can do this all day.
Yeah, we could, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Go to my website, www.jasonb Kendrick, KENDRICK.com. There's links to my books there. There's a link to the Heart of the Maya tour, which you're invited.
Thank you.
Doing a trip to Mexico in April. There's 10 and 14-day options. We're going to do meditation and see a shaman, and actually go to a lot of the central sites to really learn and get a respect and a love and a joy for the Mayan culture. And so it's not your average touristy tour. We're actually going to get into our hearts in the heart of the Mayan land. But there's that on the website. There's also a contact page, so you can get my email, phone number, and I have a new 6-month coaching program that's all about getting into the heart of who you are.
Okay.
Letting go. It's this 3-stage process of mind, body, experience. So become aware of the stories, we get into the experience of reprogramming and getting to who we are as a person, what we really want, and then practicing, you know. And I work with people for 6 months on that, so about 2 months each, but that's
Awesome.
new on there, and that's on there. So
Great. Awesome. Now, before I let you go, I want to stir the pot just a little bit.
stir the pot, do it.
We're going to get real and we're going to get raw, probably for the first time on the podcast. So if you guys are, if this hits home with you, then please don't hesitate to reach out to Jason or myself, because
Don't run away from it.
don't run away from it. Actually lean into this. Yeah. So something Jason shared, it was a meme or a quote that actually triggered me.
I remember that.
And it goes like this. Say you're on a first date and you look across the table and you want to get deep for a moment, and you say, how aware are you of your past traumas, and what are you doing about them in order so that you don't project that shit onto me?
Right.
And I bring that up because we had a conversation about it, and I appreciate you actually holding space for me to actually voice my opinion. And I had a question for you. And the question was, is this really appropriate to ask on a first date?
Well, I'll reiterate kind of my answer. I think you can feel into that, because there are some first dates that are just dates. Then there are some first dates that are like, okay, there's something here. And I think it's just, is it appropriate? I think that's a situational thing, because, yeah, I can see how, oh, we just met, come sit down, we're having a blind date, and by the way,
Tell me about
all
shit,
your
yeah.
traumas and what you're doing about it, so that I don't have to deal with it, or so that I'm aware of it. Might not go over so well.
Probably not.
Probably
no.
not. But, you know, I have had some first interactions with people who usually they're on their same growth path, they're doing their own work, and I've been very guilty of being too deep and too upfront too quickly with some people, because that's what interests me. Like, I feel like I don't want to talk about the weather and where you grew up and stuff like that. I want to talk about who you are and what you're doing. I had a
purpose and,
you know, what
mission
your purpose
and vision.
is,
And
what you're passionate about, what do you love, and you know, what are your experiences? Because I think through our traumas, there's so much to learn about who we are and what our purpose is on the planet. Because what you're growing through is what you can help others grow through. What there's you know, my first 2 books are all on power perspective, and it's about learning, looking back in your past and taking your power back. Getting out of that victim mentality of, oh, I'm a victim of my parents and where I grew up, and whether we were rich or poor, or black or white or Asian, or, you know, grew up in a third world country or the States. But looking at it like, what if as a spirit or as a soul I chose these parents, I chose these experiences, I chose these traumas, and if I look at it as to what I've learned and what strength I've gained from it, it almost gives me, like, it's like a roadmap. It's like, oh, well, if these are my traumas and they're teaching me something, where am I going with that? Mm-hmm. What have I learned? What strengths have I gained from it? Mm-hmm. And so, if you are on a first date and you feel so impelled and you have that, you feel like that connection, and it doesn't have to be so blunt as
right.
What the hell are your traumas, and
okay.
You know, don't put that shit on me, but something along like, what have you learned? What are you dealing with? Like, I want to know who you are, and I think the best way of knowing who you are is really, you know, what are you struggling with? Mm-hmm. Now, the trick is, you have to be willing to answer the same question.
Yeah, of course.
This is not a projection question. This is not I'm going to ask you this question to trigger you so you run away so I feel safe now. No, this is a conversation.
Okay.
And with the right person, absolutely. You ask that question, they're going to be like, huh, well, I've never been asked that question before. This is new and different. And one of the reasons I love that quote is a friend of mine is kind of my example. He's one of my MLS and Size 7 brothers, Ryan Taraba. And he did this amazing video about his first date with his current wife. And she's sitting across from him, and he's doing, you know, in that kind of first date jittery thing, and then she looks at him and just goes, why did your marriage fail? And so he had to go through his whole process, and then he answered. And he answered honestly and truthfully, even though it was uncomfortable. And because of that, they now have built this amazing relationship that's about growth and understanding, versus, what's your favorite color?
Right.
What do you like to do?
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, brothers and sisters. Where'd you grow up?
Right.
You know, and that was the thing. She had gone through marriage before, and she's, you know, has been to the puppet show and seen the strings, and so she didn't have time or energy to play it nice. So She was like, this guy might be worth it. Let me ask him.
Okay.
This girl might be worth it. Maybe you can ask her.
Yeah. So the reason why that hit home so much when you, I don't know if you posted it or if you asked it as like an open-ended question.
I think I shared it because I had seen it before and I loved it and I thought, yes, because actually it inspired me. I was like, I want to find the woman I can actually ask this question to on our first date, because that's the kind of woman for me.
Right.
You know.
Like attracts like. We've been talking about that a lot recently. But why that question helped me and why it resonated with me so much is that I had asked myself that question in not so blunt terms. Right. And I knew that if I was capable of doing that work to not project my shit onto other people, then I was actually doing some good in my own world. And at the moment, in that time frame, I was really shocked by it, and that is a clue into my world of like, that hits home with me, so maybe I need to do some digging into myself with that question. And I am aware of being respectful of the person across the table from me and reading the room or reading the situation and coming at it in a different way. And I want to thank you for exposing me that to a different way of thinking. And if you guys want more information about my thoughts on this, I wrote a blog and it's called It Starts With You. So I'll put it in the show notes and I'll tag it so you guys can get a little bit more of the background and actually see that meme and that quote. So I want to thank you for actually bringing it to my attention and so that I can prepare myself. Yeah. Not necessarily so I can actually up front ask that question in the exact words, because I think it needs rephrasing.
Absolutely.
And that was another catalyst moment for me to move forward in the personal growth. So I want to say thanks.
Absolutely. I mean, and you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You looked at it, saw that it triggered you, asked yourself, what does this mean for me? And then did the digging and did the work. And that's all we can ask of anybody is, take responsibility for yourself, ask yourself why, and anytime you're triggered, there's some part of you that either is afraid it's true or believes it's true. And so it's when I was like, oh, and I think in that situation you got, because it was kind of the same thing for me. I laughed when I first read the meme, and then I had to think, what would I do if somebody asked me this question? And luckily I feel I'm self-aware enough that I wouldn't shy away from it too badly, but I know I probably had that moment of like, oh crap, here we go. Yeah. But you're right, it starts with us. It's always about you're having a reaction because of a story you have, because of something you've told yourself, because of some thought process. And that's part of that contrast learning. We need all of it. We need the dark and light and everything. And that's, if we didn't have the dark, we wouldn't have the light. If everything was just light, it would be the same as darkness to us. There would be no contrast. There would be nothing to reference. And so looking at things like, okay, well, that triggered me. I may think of that as dark, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's the signpost. Maybe it's just the next marker indicating, okay, well, maybe this is the next place you need to look at. It's just like Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. It's all about leaning into resistance, because everything you want is outside your bubble. It's outside your comfort zone, so you have to go through that resistance. And if we learn to lean into the resistance versus, as has been my lifelong obsession of running away from the resistance, lean into the resistance and use that almost as a compass, like, oh, I feel resistance here. But being kind to ourselves, because I know I'm a glutton for punishment, and when I first started learning this stuff, I tried to pile drive through it. I was like, oh, I feel resistance, let me go through this, and basically beat myself into a pulp.
Against the brick wall.
Yeah, until I had to retreat, and then I was like, oh, well, see, I'm a failure again. I couldn't break down this brick wall. And it was part of that kind of cycle of this worthiness story. And
then you went out and sought acceptance from other people, validation from women, and
or just numbing out, entertainment, alcohol, drugs. Hey, let's just go numb out. Now I feel better until the next morning. Now I don't feel better.
Because anxiety and depression comes around, and on that note, wow, we really kind of spiraled upward there for a moment.
So. I hope that was an upward spiral.
Well, I want to thank you again for your time.
Absolutely.
And if Jason's message resonates with you, please don't hesitate to reach out to him, jasonbkendrick.com, and I will tag that blog post in the show notes below so you can get a little bit more information. But
Thanks,
again, man.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you do this. I'm happy you do this, and I'm glad that you let me come run my mouth for a while. So
Absolutely, man.
You're an amazing example for all of us. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and we do it for others. Gandhi said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others.
That's awesome.
And if that's a personal mantra of mine, then I'll keep rocking and rolling with it.
Do it.
Well, thanks again, Jason.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.